Hello YouTube, how's it going? This is the crossover and I'm back with another video. Today is going to be another one of my individual scouting reports for the 2022 NBA draft. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at former Kentucky commit, now I guess NBA draft commit, Shaedon Sharpe. So without any further delay, let's get straight into the video. Moving on, we do have some stats to cover regarding Shaedon Sharpe as he is 18 years old, stands at about 6 feet 6 inches, weighs about 205 pounds, and has a 7-foot wingspan. Super impressive physical profile for Shaedon Sharpe. I usually don't include players' verticals since we just don't necessarily know the exact measurements. However, there was a video that leaked on Twitter, I'd say about a week ago, where Shaedon Sharpe did test to have a 49-inch vertical, which is absolutely ridiculous. And for a comparison, Michael Jordan tested with a 48-inch vertical. So extremely impressive physical profile for the young guard, which will lead, as you can imagine, with that wingspan, with that vertical, and also just the weight that he's carrying as he carries those 205 pounds well. You can expect his physical profile to show up in a number of his different strengths. And moving on to his stats, since Shaedon Sharpe was in a very unique situation, I'm sure that a lot of you guys do know this already. However, I'm just gonna, kind of give a brief background on kind of his history. He was committed to Kentucky. He was a senior this previous year, but was eligible to play in college that year. So he decided to enroll in Kentucky in the spring semester. However, he decided to sit out during the spring semester. His original plan was to play for Kentucky this upcoming season. However, he decided to enlist in the NBA or declare for the NBA draft as he is eligible for the NBA draft as well. Which again, why wouldn't you, considering the fact that you are a projected top 5 pick in the draft? Why would you wait another year to go to college to potentially hurt your draft stock or potentially get hurt or whatnot? So I completely understand it. He decided to go ahead and again declare for the NBA draft. So as a result, we didn't have too much in terms of his high school stats. So I decided to give you guys his EYBL stats for his senior season, where he did play with Dream City Christian, and he averaged a very impressive 22.6 points, 5.8 rebounds, 2.7 assists, and 0.8 steals per game. One of the league leaders in the EYBL in terms of scoring. Very impressive rebounding numbers as well, and also I like the assist numbers, and that is something that we will talk about later. The efficiency does leave a little bit to be desired, with that 63.5% from the free throw line and shooting 47.9% from the field overall. However, the shooting 36.4% from the three-point line is impressive. And overall, I think that he's a better scorer than what the stats imply. However, they do give some implications to some things that he will have to work on that we will discuss in the concerns section of this video. Moving on to Shaedon Sharpe's strengths as a prospect, first up, I do want to talk about his finishing at the rim, where I believe that amongst the guards in this class, Shaedon Sharpe has an argument to be the best finisher at the rim. As you guys can tell, just based on his physical profile alone, he's an above-the-rim finisher. He had a number of breathtaking plays in EYBL play and also in high school play in the limited games that he did play in his senior season, where, he would just take off from, right below the elbow, right below on the free throw line, and he'll hit a defense. He'll just up and under in the air. It just looks like he's flying in the air sometimes. And just with that level of athleticism, just how gifted of a finisher he is. And also, he's a great finisher off of 2 feet. He knows the difference when to jump off 2 feet and when to jump off 1 feet. Like when he beats a man and he's attacking the rim, and he kind of has an open lane in front of him, he'll usually just go off 1 foot, which that is the typical situation in which you do jump off 1 foot. Where as opposed to if he needs to finish through traffic, or again, if there's defenders around him, he'll jump off 2 feet. So it's good to see him recognize when to utilize a 2-foot jump and when to utilize a 1-foot jump. And I think that he's better at when he's jumping with 2 feet. However, that's not to take away from him being a 1-foot jumper. So, Shaedon Sharpe being able to utilize both different types of jumps, as well as just his touch around the rim and just the way he's able to float around the rim is just so impressive. And he's just such a gifted finisher. I feel like that's a skill, that's a part of his game that should translate to the NBA and only continue to grow again as he learns and as he gets more experience. As he hasn't even played a minute of college, G League, none of that. So, just his finishing around the rim as he gets used to the NBA game when he finally gets there, it's going to be something special. And again, as I just stated, it's going to be a part of his skill set that I do see translating. And to go along with his finishing, he's also an awesome cutter. And again, that it's a part of his game that hasn't necessarily been fully fledged out yet, but just because of his athleticism, we have seen a number of plays where he's come off of back screens, and well, he's kind of hit a teammate with a backdoor cut, and then there's a man on his team that's kind of back screening his man, and Shaedon Sharpe will just go up and he'll just get passes that that shouldn't even be shouldn't even be grabbed, shouldn't even be physically possible to grab these passes, and they'll be up on the box on the rim, and Shaedon Sharpe will go up with off one foot and catch the ball and put it in. Those are the type these are the kinds of plays that Shaedon Sharpe is capable of. So when you have a player that's that gifted of an athlete, I feel like whatever team he ends up on should be able to utilize him as a cutter and as a finisher around the rim and as a lob threat of off motion plays, which it will, a bit of a spoiler for later, but I think that maybe some of his self creation skills could be inconsistent from day one in the NBA. So being as gifted of an athlete as he has, I think will really help him. And I think in terms of just being able to score without the ball as a cutter, and I feel like again that's a part of his skill set that whatever team he ends up on should try to utilize to help ease his transition to the NBA level. Moving on to his shooting, which I really like, specifically his on-ball shooting. He's a good spot-up shooter as well. His mechanics are better off ball than they are on ball. However, that's not to say his mechanics on ball are bad. There are some things he needs to work on, but he has good mechanics overall, good touch, good feel, and you can just tell that he's a scorer. You can just tell he has it, whether it's fadeaways, pull ups, and which specifically what I mentioned here in my notes is that he's just a special pull up shooter. And I haven't necessarily seen a lot of players in this class that are just able to pull up from behind the arc. We're not talking about in the mid range or anything. We're talking about from behind the arc, just pull up, stop his momentum just stop his momentum like that, and he completely catches defenders off guard. And as I state here again, Shaedon Sharpe doesn't necessarily do a great job of creating space on his step backs and whatnot, but when he's driving, he's just able to just completely stop his momentum and just pull up, and that usually catches defenders off guard, and then that in of itself creates spaces. Defenders are kind of anticipating him to drive, and then they'll kind of be caught off guard like that. So just this ability to just stop on a dime and just pull up is just so impressive. And I think he gets good elevation on his pull-ups. And again, the mechanics aren't necessarily bad. There are some things that he's gonna have to work on, some kinks here and there, but overall, his pull-up shooting ability and just self-creation has the potential to be really, really scary at the NBA level. And then another part of his offensive game is that he plays at his own pace. Nobody's going to speed up Shaedon Sharpe. And, I feel like with a lot of these scoring guards, Blake Wesley's, your Bryce McGowans, even your Jaden Hardys in the G League, even though I love Jaden Hardy, a lot of these guys can be sped up, and you kind of see a little, you saw a little bit of it at the high school level, but in very small moments because those guys were just so talented. But once they got to the college level and for Jaden Hardy, the G League level, you kind of saw them really get sped up and played out their game. Now, Shaedon Sharpe has the benefit of the doubt simply because we haven't seen him against better competition, but against EYBL competition and whatnot, he was just so cerebral out there in just terms of his pace. And what I really liked about Shaedon Sharpe when really diving into his film is that he does a good job of utilizing his body to kind of shield the ball from pressure, which is not something that you see a lot of guys do. I kind of mentioned that in my Bryce McGowans video. I feel like Bryce McGowans with all his length should kind of utilize that to kind of finish at the rim, right? That's something that I mentioned in my Bryce McGowans video. Shaedon Sharpe does a good job of utilizing his length. He just recognizes that he's bigger than everyone. He's very strong. Those 205 pounds are 205 pounds of muscle, and he does a great job of just shielding the ball, using his body to keep defenders away on top of already having a pretty solid handle. He's not gonna, break down anybody with some, fancy crossovers and nothing like that, but he's efficient with the ball. He's gonna get to his spots, and again, just with just how cerebral he is, just plays at his own pace. Nobody's going to speed him up, which is something that you really, really like to see. And I feel like he might get sped up a little bit from day one at the NBA level, but I feel like as he gets used to the NBA game, I feel like he'll be perfectly fine. And again, he'll be able to play at his own pace. And then another part of that is also his ability as a pick and roll creator, which again, I feel like is something that has a lot of upside in his game, as not only as a scorer, right, coming off screens and whatnot, but as a passer. His passing game is really underrated. It's not something that you see a lot of people talk about when it comes to Shaedon Sharpe. A lot of people only want to talk about his scoring, but I feel like he's a very underrated playmaker. He does a great job of dumping off to his bigs, when he's attacking downhill after, coming off a screen, which is again is something that you like to see. He's able to recognize, that the defense is worried about him, and he's able to see, very small windows to feed his big men in dump off situations. And I also think he does a great job of hitting open shooters on the outside when they're there. And overall, he's a very unselfish player as well. He has moments where his shot selection is definitely questionable, but if there's an open guy, Shaedon Sharpe is usually going to hit them, and that is something that you like to see, and that's a quality that you do like to see out of a 5-star. That's an extremely highly touted prospect coming out of high school, right? So that's on the offensive side of the floor. On the defensive side of the floor, even though he needs a lot of work on the defensive side of the floor, as a weak side defender, I do feel like he has a fair amount, or I wouldn't say a fair amount, I would say a decent amount of positive reps where he's able to recognize switches. He's able to recognize, okay, I need to switch out onto this man. And he's also in these reps, he's also doing a good job of communicating to his teammates, being like, okay, hey, I'm going to switch. You get out there to my man, right? And he also does a good job of contesting open defenders in this situation, also acting as a weak side rim protector just with his athleticism. So even though, again, his defensive awareness definitely needs a lot of work, and again, that's something that we'll get to in just a bit. Right now, I've liked some of the flashes that he has shown. Some of the reps have been very positive, so that gives some hope for him to be a positive someday on that side of the floor. Moving on to some of the concerns I do have regarding Shaedon Sharpe. First up, I do want to talk about his shot selection on the offensive side of the floor. And even though he is a fairly, unselfish player, there are times on the court where Shaedon Sharpe will kind of just take a shot. And as I mentioned before, he doesn't do the best of jobs in terms of creating separation on, his step backs or side steps. So as a result, he won't necessarily catch a defender off guard, with his pull-ups, and then they'll kind of just be in his space, and he will just have like literally no room at all to shoot. And Shaedon Sharpe will still shoot, and oftentimes it ends up with the shot, hitting the backboard rather than the rim, right? So I feel like even though I'd say those shots happen maybe about once a game at the very least. And I feel like that's a part of his game that's really going to have to, be ironed out at the NBA level. And I feel like that's going to be a shot that you're going to see often from him at the NBA level, at least in the early stages of his rookie year, before he really learns how to feel out NBA defenders and kind of just learns, how to get off good shots, and then how to get off not only good shots but efficient shots as well for him, right? So I feel like his shot selection is definitely going to be something that is going to, be a little bit of a rude awakening for him, in his early stages at the NBA level. So again, I expect it to be something that he will struggle with, but hopefully get better with as his career progresses. And another part of his offensive game that does bother me is his release on a shot. As I mentioned before, it is a little bit of a problem, as his guide hand and shooting hand are both relatively low compared to most other releases. And this is really relevant in pretty much all areas of his game. I feel that even with his shot selection, where those shots that he does take, those pull-up shots where he doesn't have any space, I feel that if his release was just a little bit higher on those, I feel like even those would be better shots than they are. So I feel like this is a key issue for him. And there are times where his release is fine, on the open shots where his shooting hand is high, and even sometimes on those shots his guide hand kind of flares out. So again, that's another little mechanical thing or mechanical part of his shot that might potentially have to be ironed out at the next level. But generally, when his release is high, his shot is pretty much automatic. So that is something to keep in mind with Shaedon Sharpe, and hopefully that is something that his trainers are telling him, that whatever NBA developmental staff he ends up on is something that they keep harbor on him with, right? So, and again, as I state here, it's really really obvious in free throws, and I feel like that's the major number one component as far as him being, a 63% free throw shooter. Another part on the offensive side of the floor that kind of bothers me a little bit is just he can be a bit passive, and I know, I really try on this channel to give you guys on court things, like specific things like help side defense, strong side, weak side defense. So yeah, I don't really like to get into, none of that artificial crap about, oh, he doesn't want it hard enough, or none of that. I don't think that that's real productive basketball talk. I don't think that that's, doing anything. I feel like that's just a bit lazy, right? But I feel like I really wanted to note it with Shaedon Sharpe, even though just because it kind of bothers me at times, and I felt that, with Dream City Christian at times, he just wasn't utilized enough. Like there would be minutes, not even there would be, a good amount of times in quarters where Shaedon Sharpe would just be out there doing cardio, where it would just be, fast break, for those of you that AAU basketball, where it's just no plays run, just up and down, just athletes, right? The EY, right? So, there was a fair amount of times where that happened with Shaedon Sharpe, right? Where you're just watching AAU, ball, and it's just not productive at all. And then Shaedon Sharpe is just up there running up and down the court, not touching the ball at all. And I feel like a fair amount of that is coaching. It's like you have the number one player in high school on your team. Why is he not? Why does he not have the ball in his hands every possession? I don't care who else is on the team. If I have Shaedon freaking Sharpe on my EYBL team, he is running a pick and roll every single possession. I don't care the scenario, right? He's just that level of a player. But at the same time, it is a little bit on Shaedon Sharpe too, of being like, like, dude, like you haven't touched the ball, right? Go get the ball. You're Shaedon Sharpe. You're going to be, hopefully a top 5 pick. We'll talk about where I have him on my big board later, but like, go get the ball, right? And I would prefer to see him be more aggressive in terms of getting his own in certain times in games. So that's about it on the offensive side of the floor for me. However, moving on to the defense side of the floor, where his on ball is decent, but he can fall asleep a fair amount both on and off the ball. But specifically on the ball, it's I'm less worried about it on the ball simply because he has good lateral quickness, and there are positions where he has shown the ability to lock in, and he's able to slide in front of guards, kind of cut off their driving lanes. So that's something that I really like, and I feel that even though he does fall asleep a little bit, again, that is something to definitely note. But I'm less concerned about his on-ball defense than I am his overall weak side or overall help side defense, where it is bad. Again, as I stated before, there are some a fair amount of reps that are good, but a majority of the reps are just terrible, where he just falls asleep on weak side, and his man will be coming off of stagger screens, and he'll just fall asleep, and you just won't recognize the play. And sometimes there's and in these EYBL games, sometimes there's parents there or whatnot. It's sometimes Shaedon Sharpe, you can hear parents in the background being like, screen, 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 and Shaedon Sharpe won't recognize the screen until it's too late. So that's something that he's going to really be hit with at the NBA level, simply because he's going to be playing with teams where more complicated plays are going on. A typical AAU EYBL set is not that complicated compared to even your basic college set, where there's like 2, 3, 4, 5 reads in one play. Then that's not even nothing compared to an NBA play where you got all this motion stuff going on and whatnot, and all these other different reads. So Shaedon Sharpe is really gonna have to step up with his awareness and whatnot. And I understand that he's gonna be whatever team he ends up on, he's gonna have to carry a heavy load offensively. He's gonna have to a lot to develop on the offensive side of the floor, as we just stated. But also, I feel that I understand his offensive workload is gonna be pretty big right off the bat. But his weak side defense is going to have to improve a little bit. And I understand. I'm not one of those guys that thinks that he's you're an offensive superstar, so you got you got to show up on the defense side of the floor too. It's like, no, obviously not. If a guy's working as hard as Shaedon Sharpe is, assuming he if a guy's carrying as much of a load defensively as Shaedon Sharpe, I'm not expecting him to be some superstar defensive player. But the weak side was pretty embarrassing. The weak side awareness was pretty embarrassing from Shaedon Sharpe at times. And also, as a strong side defender, I feel like he can give a little bit more of an effort. Sometimes he stays a little bit too close to his man, and I feel that it would be nice to see him, kind of utilize his athleticism, kind of in his lateral quickness, to kind of swipe at the ball handler a little bit, to maybe come up with steals, so that of course, he can leak out into fast breaks and get himself into fast break situations. Moving on to Shaedon Sharpe's outlook throughout his career. First up, I do want to talk about his floor, which I see his floor being, right off the bat, being, a rotation player slash a low end starter, where he shows flashes of his offensive skill set. What made him, a top five pick, presumably, at the very least, the top 10 pick, in the NBA draft, and why he was ranked so highly coming out of high school, where he does get hot on the offensive side of the floor. But, he definitely is going to start off with inconsistencies in terms of his shot selection and overall just his shooting numbers with his efficiency because of, that release. I feel like is going to play a big part of it. And just overall, just, getting accustomed to the NBA game. You got to keep in mind, this is a guy who's only played half his senior season and is going to go straight to the NBA. At least, a guy like Jaden Hardy who, had a similar circumstance in his senior year, not necessarily that, he went to college, but that, COVID kind of canceled, or COVID played a big part of him, missing certain games in his senior season. However, he got the benefit, going to play in the G League, things like that with this year's class, with a lot of these, freshmen. So Shaedon Sharpe is going to go from playing, some high school, really EYBL competition to NBA competition, starting NBA, because whichever team drafts Shaedon Sharpe is going to start him right off the bat, view him as their potential, franchise player, right? So he's gonna have a rude awakening from day one at the NBA level. However, I expect him to get better over time, and the only reason why I have him as a rotation slash low and starter quality player is because his efficiency numbers are presumably going to be very bad right off the bat, in his NBA career. However, defensively, I think it's going to be a real issue with that off-ball defense, just given how much he struggled in the EYBL and just throughout his high school career. Again, he's he's going to be going from EYBL competition, which is very good in its own right. Those are college level players, future college level players, to NBA grown men professionals, the best of the best. So he is probably going to look terrible, or at least bad, right off the bat. Again, he's going to show enough flashes that are going to keep him, on the floor and whatnot, but expect him to be, not a positive level player right off the bat. And the only reason why I have him this high as a low end starter is simply because of just the potential of Shaedon Sharpe and just the abilities that he has and just how hot he can catch, at times. Moving on to the median outcome, where he does end up being a very high level starter or a low end all star, kind of in that tier. And the reason why I have him in this tier is simply because the shooting form fixes itself over time, and where he legitimately becomes a 3 level scorer. Maybe not the most efficient self creator, but still very a prevalent self creator, right? A guy who the defense is really going to have to worry about, and where his playmaking kind of blossoms a little bit, where he can be a secondary creator for a team on their offense, not the primary initiator of a team, but that if he's that secondary guy while getting up a good amount, secondary guy in terms of facilitating and playmaking, but if he can be that guy while being a very good score for you, then that does sound like a low end all-star tier player to me. And also the off-ball defense definitely has to improve a little bit in this median outcome, and I think it will get a little bit better just from experience, just from improving IQ wise, and again, just playing more NBA games. And I'm not expecting him to be some all-world defender, but just maybe being an average, slightly below average defender will get him in this median tier outcome of really being that low end all-star. However, I believe his ceiling to be a perennial all-star slash all NBA caliber player, and I am that high on Shaedon Sharpe. I think that this is very realistic for Shaedon Sharpe. This is a real outcome for Shaedon Sharpe. Even though we do have the median outcome, which I always say is the most likely outcome, his ceiling is very reachable as well, where he becomes a legitimate option for a championship level team, where that three level scoring really blossoms, with his pace, with his finishing at the rim, with his ability to just pull up both in that mid-range area and also from behind the arc. And again, with that pick and roll creation, it really comes around and shows itself, where he becomes a real offensive threat and a real offensive engine for a championship team. And also where his defense, definitely comes around, on and off the ball. Just, again, as I stay here, with increased effort, just given his athletic traits, and also, again, just with more experience. So we're talking about a guy who is very scary. This is a very scary player we're talking about. We're talking about a guy who is a 3 level scorer, an efficient 3 level scorer, while being a solid secondary creator, while being not a bad defender. So my comparison for Shaedon Sharpe is I put a more athletic Devin Booker, and they kind of remind me, or he kind of reminds me a little bit of Devin Booker, just simply because of the way he's able to just get to his spots, kind of just like effortless, and that's what I definitely see in Shaedon Sharpe. So I mean, yeah, a more athletic Devin Booker. Like that is an all NBA caliber. That is an not all. That's an all NBA caliber player right there. And we just saw Devin Booker be the number one scoring option on the champion on a finals team last season. So we're talking about a guy who could be a better finisher and just a more talented overall player than Devin Booker. You know, that is a very scary player to think about. And I think this ceiling is very reachable for Shaedon Sharpe. And that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think about Shaedon Sharpe in the comment section. Am I a bit too high on Shaedon Sharpe? I know I'm a bit higher on him than the overall consensus. Let me know if you guys think I'm a little bit too high. Should I bring down my expectations? Do you guys think I'm just about right where I have him? You know, I do have him in that top 2 tier in this class. I have him ranked second, only behind Paolo Banchero right now, but we shall see how things unravel as the draft really starts, as the draft season really starts coming along. So again, let me know what you guys think about Shaedon Sharpe in the comment section. And again, that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Share the video with a friend if you haven't. Want to keep growing the channel, keep growing the community that we have here. And again, outside of that, that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And peace. Have a blessed day and take care.